Hey everyone, so I've been doing some testing with the SofaBaton, and as I mentioned in one of my early videos, I think it was the actual unboxing video for both this as well as the X1 as well as the U1 remotes. And as I mentioned in those particular videos, I wanted to actually give this a chance once I actually got my system fully set up. So that's with the Hisense L9G, Apple TV 4K as the streaming device, and the Marantz SR8015 as the actual AVR. So obviously previously I had a soundbar setup that would have obviously linked via both IR as well as I think that also supported Bluetooth as well. I think the Marantz has Bluetooth, but I think that's only for streaming. I believe remote control in terms of functionality is either HDMI or infrared. So I don't think you can connect to that via Bluetooth directly from a remote. Long story short, I wanted to do further testing before I actually agreed to do the review for this particular device, because I didn't think it was fair to actually review it on that basis. Now, one of the things that kind of delayed it more so was the fact that I've been reviewing some other remotes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a comparison between this and the Best Joy Super Remote. So I actually have a new one of those, so you'll see I actually have two of these, and I'll get into why I've got two of those in that separate video. But essentially, if I come in, and the way this functions is you've got your off button at the top, and then you have your back functionality. So this is controlling the actual remote itself. That's why they've separated this. So I know some users have complained that why is this all the way at the top, the back button. I kind of understand that, because they don't want you pressing that when it comes to you wanted to go back on content, because it's not the same thing. It's not related to the same thing. The main menu is like this. So you have activities, devices, and then set is basically all to do with the actual pairing between this and the hub. So this does come with a hub, so you can see the hub just there, and it's got some IR blasters. So that, for anybody that knows me, will be the first point of sort of contention. So I like things tidy. Obviously right now the room itself is not tidy, but if you've been following the channel, you'll understand what's going on and why the room isn't tidy. When I say I like things tidy, what I mean is I don't like IR blasters. I like Bluetooth, or I want to be able to control the device directly from the remote itself. So currently I actually have one IR blaster just there, and I have one IR blaster just there. That is in order to control the Hisense and the Marantz, which you potentially could do it via Bluetooth, so you can control the Hisense via Bluetooth. However, it's quite convoluted, and it's basically you have to disconnect from the Apple TV. You have to connect to that. It's delayed, and it's the delay that causes the problem when it comes to this sort of product. So, in terms of speed, if you want speed in a smart remote or universal remote, you always want to be going via IR. Now, the problem this particular remote has is, as you can see, it doesn't have an IR port. Now, the U1 or X1, I can't remember exactly which way around they are. So if we take a look at this one, you will notice that this one does have IR blasters, or well, an IR blaster. So I'll potentially rerun this test with that remote, but the ergonomics of this particular remote I don't particularly like. I don't like the feel of this. Everything's okay, but it just feels cheap in comparison to this one. So this one feels a lot more expensive. It feels a lot more premium. If I come into devices, this is where you'll start to see my contention with this particular remote. So you'll see I've got Apple, which is Apple TV. You've got Hisense L9G, once again, fairly simple. Fire TV stick, all simple up to this point. But then you come down to here and you see Hisense Picture, and then you've got Hisense Power. Then you've got the Marantz, and that's basically the device. Now, what are these two? Why do I need these? The Hisense L9G, that's the Bluetooth. So that's where I can connect to the L9G via Bluetooth, and that works. It's just, it takes time because it has to switch from one device to the other. In this, Marantz at the bottom, that's purely IR. Now, the reason I have both of these is to actually replicate one setting that the Best Joys actually do. So if we hit home on the remote, and I've programmed it to this particular button. So if I hit the blue button, what you'll notice, if it decides to work, oh, sorry, no. See, this is the thing, you have to be in activities for this to work. And then once it's in activities and it's selected on theater, then it will work. So now when I hit the blue button, it basically switches picture modes. Now, that one feature, as I've mentioned before, it isn't actually available on the original remote. You don't have a fast key to be able to change picture modes. And because the L9G, it's not the best when it comes to picture modes, I've actually created some for different types of content that I watch, either be it sports or movies, that kind of thing. So I want to be able to switch modes quite quickly. So originally I couldn't actually get that working via the Bluetooth connection on the L9G. However, I figured out that the reason I could do it via my best joint, not via this, is because that was actually connecting via infrared. So when you go in infrared and you actually choose the Hisense as a TV, it actually gives you different functions. However, the problem is, as you'll see, I've got picture and then I've got power. So the power one is essentially controlling everything else. So that's turning it on, turning it off, volume functions, all the rest of it. The picture one, the only function on that particular remote or that type of that selection is it actually enables the picture mode button. So it enables me to change the picture mode. Now, the problem is, obviously, I end up with multiple remotes that I've actually added. Now, that in itself isn't too much of an issue because, like I said, if you come to activities, this is essentially the smart part of it where you can reprogram all the buttons and you can get them to do stuff that other remotes do. However, that brings me to the second problem with this remote. So I'm on theatre mode at the moment, and say, for example, I switch to the Fire Stick or a different input on the Marantz. The problem is this particular theatre mode is programmed for all of these controls. So your up, down, left, right, your center button, all your menu buttons, all of these all control just the Apple TV. They won't control the Fire Stick, even though it would be selected. I would have to actually go in and create a new activity and call it Fire TV. So obviously it wouldn't take long in this menu. You just have a second one and you just go up and down, but I still have to switch between them. I'll just give you a quick preview in terms of what this remote actually does. So on this particular remote, what you'll notice is I've got Apple TV, which we're on at the moment, and then I've got Fire TV. Well, I've got PS4 on there, but if we, yeah, this one's not actually set up. I'll show you on the new one because the new one's the one that I've actually set this particular feature up on. So I have Fire TV just there and I have Apple TV. So if I hit Fire TV, what you'll notice is it switches to the Fire TV. In order to switch between the various remotes on this, I can literally just swipe left and right on here and hit home and it will connect and then it will let me do whatever I need to do. And then if I want to go back, hit Apple TV, and it switches back to Apple TV. So it's the speed with which you can actually switch devices that's kind of holding this back. So on the one hand, yeah, it's got a lot of good functionality, but on the other, it's very slow in terms of how you have to use it. Essentially, in order to do what the Best Joy can do, I have to be in devices rather than activities. And I have to basically switch between all of these, choose which one's got which functionality and do it all manually. Now, one positive note is I have managed to map some of these. So obviously, as I mentioned, if I go back to activities, and you can create loads of different activities. So it's not really an issue between functionality, but it just means that you have to actually do that manually. Whereas on the Best Joy, it basically does it automatically. So on this particular activity, what I can do is green is basically synced to the Apple TV. Blue, as I've mentioned previously, it changes the picture mode. Red is your fast shutdown, so red obviously power. So I press that once and it shuts the Hisense down. I'll give it a few seconds for everything to power down. There we go. And then if I hit I can hit either really, but the way I do it is green to turn the Apple TV on. And then obviously when it detects an import, the Marantz turns on. And then when the Marantz turns on, it boots up the Hisense. So yeah, it works. You can do stuff with it, but it's a lot slower than some other use cases. So obviously using the Best Joy is a lot faster and it allows me to control many different devices at the same time. obviously without having this. Now watch what happens when I actually move these. And bear in mind, it actually took me quite a while to set that up. So now that I've moved those and we're back here, we're on the same activity. If I hit volume, nothing. And another thing on the volume, when I actually initially set up this activity, the volume buttons were actually switched. So volume up went down and volume down went up. I had to once again go in and manually change that for some reason. So yeah, now obviously the only device that this can control, because the IR blasters have been moved, is the Apple TV itself. So as you can see, I can control that, but it's one where I really wanted this to succeed, because ergonomically it's better. Now, one thing on the ergonomics, I have had occasions where I've actually picked it up when I was using it with my previous setup, and I'll pick it up that way, because this obviously, when it's on in a dark room, there's no distinguishing features that actually tell you which way around you've got this. And because the lights aren't activated by motion, you literally have to actually scroll or press a button in order to get it to come on. It does have backlight, so you will see this in the dark once it does actually light up. But initially, obviously, if you've got this the other way around and you scroll, then the remote's upside down. So yeah, there's that. Obviously, it's happened a few times. You kind of get used to feeling for the scroll button when you're using it, so you kind of know which way up or down it is. But ultimately, I just haven't found myself using it. That's the problem. In order to do all of this, in order to create the mess that it creates, potentially, obviously, you could just stick those somewhere and you can separate the double one, stick one there, but I would still have trailing cables, and that's what I don't want. I don't want any trailing cables. So for that reason, unfortunately, as good as this functionality-wise is, because you can add a lot of devices, and obviously once you get IR, you can basically control almost any device, that also comes through on the Best Joy as well. Now, what I will do is I'll do a separate video for this one, and I'll basically repeat this. As you can see, this one was actually set up with the Apple TV, Hisense and Marantz, and you can tell by the dust on this that I've not used it much. And that's another kind of point on this, is the fact that this takes batteries. The battery compartment is very, very difficult to open. The actual functionality of it, so in terms of volume and everything, controlling buttons like that, it's laid out really well, and it's close to your arrow keys as well. So let me just switch back to the correct device. In fact, let's see if it can actually control. Yeah, so as you can see, directly without having to have any IO blasters, it's controlling that. If we come up to the Hisense, does it control the Hisense? No, it's not got that functionality, but that might just be the particular remote that I added where I didn't actually set it up. That may well be set to Bluetooth, which I think it actually is, in fact, now that I remember. So yeah, this, once you switch it to Apple TV, should potentially be Bluetooth. Yeah, there you go. So you see the little Bluetooth icon come up, and I can't remember if I unpaired it, so that might be why it's not actually working on the Apple TV at the moment, because I actually unpaired it. But yeah, it's not. So you have to scroll down, select it, and then volume. Yeah, nothing. The ideal situation would be a mixture between these two. So rather than the hub, which I get that saves you having to use purely IR, and it gives you a sort of Bluetooth effect. If they could have got the functionality of a IR blaster in the remote as well as in the unit itself, I think that would have been better. The other option is obviously to move that unit forward somewhere, but wherever I've placed it, it still doesn't control those devices, because generally your IR ports or your IR repeaters are actually on the front, or IR blasters, I should probably say. Those things, I suppose, are the repeaters. But yeah, it just doesn't work very well with IR devices for me. Every other remote that I've used, because you're facing these units, potentially they work better. Now, the other part of that is obviously if you were to go purely Bluetooth, because I don't really like using IR. If I was to move all of this stuff and have that hidden away in there or something, I'm not necessarily going to have an IR blaster going to it. Or if it's in a rack really far away, then those repeaters definitely won't work. You'd have to buy some third-party ones. Yeah, the whole thing, it's just a lot of work to get something working that doesn't actually work that well, if that makes sense. It's a lot of steps, I should say, in order to get you to be able to do a functionality that really you should be able to do at any time. And then it still leaves you in the situation where these will only control one device unless you go in and program it otherwise, and you're still having to manually switch it up and down, whereas that little scroll button on the best joy I think actually performs a little better. But what I'll do is, this video's gone on for quite a while, so I'll give it a wrap at that. I will probably have a proper video, but this was the segment explaining what's going on, why you haven't actually seen a video on this. This has been recorded on the iPhone, so colors will be a bit off because of the projector, so apologies for that.